Hi, my name's Ian Wallace, Messed Up Counsellor. Please, if you see this, like and share, because other people may be um, experiencing the process that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about today something quite personal to me, but affects a lot of people, which is dyslexia. My diagnosis for dyslexia didn't happen until I went to university, about the age of 40. And that process meant that I started to be more aware of why I worked my world the way I did. So, growing up, I didn't know I was dyslexic. And I came from a time when those kind of things weren't necessarily understood and certainly weren't tested for, as far as I'm aware. So, when I'm processing education, learning, um, I believed everybody did it the same as me, quite naturally. And when I'm growing up in primary school, those kind of places, when I'm becoming part of the education system, um, I didn't learn the same way. And in those days, unfortunately, teachers, you needed to learn the way they taught you. They didn't necessarily accommodate people who learned differently. Most of the times, that resulted in some things that are not part of the world nowadays, thank heavens, which is kind of being chastised and having blackboard rubbers thrown at you and um, rulers snapped across your hands and various other kind of implements of torture. Let's put it that way. So I'm growing up in a process whereby I'm really good at numbers, figures. I'm really good at doing mental arithmetic. I'm fantastic in solving problems. And those kind of things, massively good, and still are as part of my world, although the arithmetic stuff does tend to go with age. But learning grammar, English, writing, those kind of things were not easy. And I very much couldn't get my head around it. So in those days, people weren't, as I said, aware of such things, certainly teachers or education authorities, generally speaking. So I will, it's like most people's probably my age, I got put into classes whereby we would play games when certain things were happening, educational grammar and English and those kind of things. And so my world was in a different educational process than a lot of my peers. Now that I didn't see necessarily as bad, wrong, uncomfortable. I just thought, well, okay, that's the way I should do it. So then come to going through the education system when I became 11. And there was something called the 11th plus, which was a graded exam, which everybody did when they were 11-year-old to see where they went into secondary modern school, as it was called in those days. And I failed. My brother and sister, who were older than me, had passed and gone on to grammar schools, but I failed. And that process meant that I didn't go forward the way I had been expected to do so. So that's when it started to become uncomfortable. That's when it started to be an awkward process of me beginning to think I must be thick, which I aren't, obviously. Um, but it made me feel different. It made me feel not as good as. And consequently, I went into an education system that initially was okay, to be fair. I went to a school in Hull, which is no longer a school. Um, but that was nice. It was safe. It was comfortable, although it was 8 or 9 miles away from where I lived, and I had to get a bus or a train to get there. But it was okay. It wasn't fantastic because of the nobody going there that I knew and being different, but it was okay. And then there was a government declaration of education that after I'd been there 2 years, when I was 13, went into a different process, and everything changed it throughout the country. And that didn't help me, to be fair. My point is that where I'm working with change, I'm pretty good. As long as I know what's going on, and long as I can see something, I can adapt to it. So I learned pretty early on that I cannot read well. I can read this now that I've got my computer, but I can't read well. So I don't engage with books, with academia when I leave school. And I don't come from that process. So my restrictions on that with the dyslexia is that if I did read academia, which I did do when I went to university, I would have to read things several times in order to understand it, to process it. So I'd read paragraphs over and over again. I'd find it very hard to understand the grammar of the words and things like commas and all those kind of things, speech marks, kind of fundamental paragraphs, full stops. When I was writing, I wouldn't use those kind of things. So mine would be just one long diatribe of words and not necessarily words that explored or explained things well. So I knew that wasn't a part of my world when I left school. So in those days, thankfully, we didn't have to have pieces of paper to do the job, and we just had to be able to do it. And we learned on the job. We learned by seeing other people, and we didn't need to pass exams or have degrees. And we could do it and be okay with it. And so I found I could learn by seeing. I could learn by copying. I could learn by problem solving. So those kind of developmental tools really gave me a good foundation of enhancing my career prospects without having any educational need. And I moved forward into fairly major situations in organisations and corporations. When I started looking at my way of seeing the world with this diagnosis of dyslexia when I went to university, it changed dramatically in how I saw the world. I realised that the things that were my skills and my strengths were great, fantastic, but I also realised that if I present something to people, I don't present it in a written way. I present it in a verbal way. I present it in examples. I present it in situation scenarios. And that made me really understand about other people's learning processes, not just mine. So I started analysing things. I started checking things, understanding things, finding ways through things. And so as I'm working that academic process and being at university and getting the dyslexia diagnosis, which the university did for me, which was really helpful, I then went back to my tutors with that information and said, well, I can't learn by you giving me things to read. That is not how I learn, and I can't learn. And thankfully, in those days, the universities were becoming much more adapted into how learning takes place and what people need to learn. So I said to my tutors, right, okay, you need to give me examples, you need to give me ideas, you need to give me things I could know and understand from experiential processes that had happened or I could make some understanding from. And they did that, which was really good. So I changed and adapted my learning process. So as I said to you, I'm really good, and I always have been really good at problem solving. I'm really good at patterns as well. So if you get the two pictures, where you see, this picture and that picture, and you have to spot the differences, those kind of things. Very, very good at it, because I can see the differences fairly quickly. I don't really need to study it, to be fair. It just stands out at me. So problem solving is that kind of a process. Things stand out. You see structures. I also learned that my way of being is very similar to a lot of other people's. We are all different with dyslexic processes, dyslexia. Some people will be really good, like I am, at figures and solutions and focusing. Other people will be seeing the world differently. There is usually not one way of being dyslexic. So as I'm going through that process and finding the strengths I have, and realizing the weaknesses are not weaknesses because I'm thick. The weakness is because I don't have that mental processing program stuff in my mind. So I can't work it. So I don't see me as being wrong because I can't do that. I just see that that's not my strength. So I bring other people in to do those kind of processes if I need to. So my world is shaping in a way that allows that aspect of me that I didn't think was right or didn't fit to be allowed and to be seen as it's not one of my strengths and skills, but the other strengths and skills I've got. I also realised that my process of any situation is that I look at the solution to something first, and then I work out how to get to that solution. I see the answer and then work out how to get to the answer. Now, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people find they do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, to wherever they want to get to, and they get to it. But I work backwards, which is a bit weird in some senses. But it kind of means that I tend to process things faster than other people. That's not good or bad. That's just a process that I do. But it means I can get frustrated with other people who don't process things as fast as me. So I can get very irritable when people can't see, well, that looks to me like it's common sense. Why can't you see that? Well, actually, they can't see it because they don't see the world the way I see it. No, that's not right or wrong, good or bad. I'm not better or worse. It's just different. And I think that's the main thing of acceptance is difference. I now can be different and not feel it's wrong. I can be different and feel it's good. It's helped me enormously in my world, in my life, and in my work as a counsellor, to be fair. So I see those differences as being an addition to me. So when I look at things, I see people being differently abled, not disabled. And I think differently abled is a better title for me personally, because it means I can accept that difference and it will have positives, as all things have positives and negatives, but it will have positive applications. So when I'm working with people now and I'm learning all these things about myself as I come through university and doing a teaching degree, I find that my presenting of issues seems to be from people telling me is I make things simple. I make situations simple to understand. And I think that again is around the dyslexia. I think I see the solution, I work backwards so I can create the more simpler process in understanding it. So because I'm using scenarios, situations in my exploring, explaining process, people seem to be able to recognise it better and to understand it better. So I think in my world, the dyslexic world, my own aspect of dyslexic, which I say will be different with other people, but I think there are some similarities. Then that process of being able to spot, being able to see things in a different way is helpful, but not wrong. It's just different. So if you have a young person, or if you have a partner, anybody really, family member, that is seeing things slightly different to you, don't target that. Don't say they're wrong. But check out that the way they express their world, understand their world, might be that they are actually dyslexic. It may be other things, obviously, but it may be that they're dyslexic if they see things differently. I'm not good with some things, I know that. But if I connect to somebody, my understanding of them is enhanced by my seeing this difference and seeing this, what doesn't seem right, what doesn't fit. Now, to some people, that won't be necessarily a big deal. But I'll give you an example of that. So when I'm engaging with somebody, I'm watching everything. Everything's coming in. Everything is being analysed because I'm good at analysing and spotting differences and patterns. So I'm seeing those things. And if their body language, if their facial expressions, if their presentation gives me a difference to the words they're speaking, then I will pick up on that fairly quickly. And I can then use that understanding to realise that there's something else going off in the room. There's something else happening. And that can help the clients in that process, because then by picking up those things, I can start bringing attention to them obviously in a professional and sensitive way. And that then can help them to connect, unload, say things that maybe they were protecting themselves or deflecting from saying. And that helps build that relationship between me and clients. So I think those things are really, really helpful. The things that are not helpful, if somebody, one of my supervisees will say to me, do you have a book on this, that or the other? No way I'm going to give them that, because that's not my world. I can't remember books and titles and content. So I don't have books and things. I don't usually read an awful lot, to be fair. I get my information visually, usually is better for me than reading it. So by pictures, by television, by videos, those kind of things, by seeing life outside of here. But I think it also makes me more aware of not just my dyslexia, but I think it gives me information about spotting other people who are dyslexic. I think in my world, how I see it, then it tends to make me realise other people that are similar. So although I'm not trained to diagnose, and I'm not, and I wouldn't, I can spot similarities with people when I'm connecting to them, working with them, being friendly with them. And that process of spotting those differences helps me to engage better. So if you are dyslexic, and a lot of people are and don't even realise it, then the things that you will be good at, other people won't. Try not to get frustrated by them not being as quick to understand as you. Try to give them that freedom, that flexibility. See that difference that they are to you as being an enhancement, an opportunity to engage with the world in a different way. If you're a parent and you think your child may be dyslexic, there's many tests you can do nowadays. Diagnosis might be hard to get, as with a lot of situations nowadays. In my world, there was no such thing as a diagnosis for dyslexia. Well, not necessarily that I was aware of at the time. But you may be able to help them even though they can't have a diagnosis, of saying, actually, no, the way that you see your world is not wrong, it's different. And enhance those differences. Bring on those skills and abilities that they will have. If they can't read books, then don't see them as being wrong. Just find a different way for them to learn. And you will help them feel more connected, more part of the community. And hopefully they will have a different experience much younger than I had. And they'll be coming to terms with it much younger than I did. And they can see themselves as being okay. I think with all these things, whatever differently abled aspect you have, whether that's dyslexia, Asperger's, ADHD, whatever you want to see or make those situations understood by. I think all of them have a positive and a negative application. So try and find the positive, the things they do well, and not the negative focusing on them. Because if you focus on what they can't do, that's not necessarily going to help them. Try and focus on what they can do and create that process going forward. Make them feel comfortable, make them safe, secure. Make them feel okay. Hopefully that's made sense. Hopefully that trip into my world has given you some ideas. It's not extensive. It's not full. It's not the whole. There is always difference and diversity in everything. But if it gives you some ideas of how to interact and how to check and how to make yourself feel okay and realise that you're differently abled in your skills and abilities, then that's been worthwhile in making this podcast. I like me now. I think me's okay. I never did for a long period of time, but I do now. So hopefully you'll get there quicker than I did. My name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Take care.